TOK oral presentation, date 25th of March 2015, candidate Tanner Kohler.
Okay, my name is Tanner Kohler, like she said, and I will be giving my TOK presentation on the effects of sense perception. So my real life situation is an article that I came across where 40 different train stations in London had an excess of behavior going on that was kind of unruly and violent, and they wanted to lower this amount of violent activity, so they tried a few things. But the one thing that they found worked was that in all 40 stations they began to play classical music over the loudspeakers. So after they did this for 18 months, robberies were cut by 33%, assaults on the staff by 25%, and vandalism by 37%. So I play the trumpet, so I like music. So I wondered, after I read this article, why is this working? Why does changing what you hear in the station, and in this case classical music, why does that change what people do? So this led me to ask myself a few questions. First, I realized that all information that human beings take in is through the five senses, and we call that sense perception. So the first area of knowledge that I thought of that applied to sense perception is the arts, obviously, because that almost exclusively appeals to your senses. Then I asked myself, in what ways do each of the five senses influence somebody? What does that do when you experience things from the outside world? Then the next area of knowledge I came to is the natural sciences, because that explains what physiologically happens to the human body as you take in different information, and the effects that that has. Then I asked myself, how far can the interpretation of this information change somebody, and how they act and what they perceive, like it did in the train stations. And then last, I asked myself, what causes someone to act the way that they do? And I remember that in class we talked about reason and emotion being the two things that really influence what we do. And in this case, I'm going to talk a little more about emotion. So just to clarify, when I say emotion, I mean the strong feeling that somebody has derived from the circumstance they're in or the mood that they're feeling. When I say influence, it's the capacity to have an effect on someone's character, development, or behavior of someone or something. And sense perception, like I said before, is just information taken in by the five senses. Okay, so this led me to my knowledge question, which is, to what extent is emotion influenced by sense perception? Okay. So the first area of knowledge that I came to, like I said, is the arts, and I want to talk specifically about music in the arts. What is music? Well, music is organized sound that appeals to people orally, or through the ears, which is one of the strongest senses of the human body. And an application of music in the real world is movie soundtracks. I came up with that because in movies, composers will put in music to change the mood of the movie almost instantaneously. And that's one of the most effective ways that they found to do that. I hope you all know who Taylor Swift is. She's someone who's made her career and her living off of music. And she says, "I've always felt music is the only way to give an instantaneous moment of the feel of slow motion, to romanticize it, to glorify it, and to give the soundtrack and rhythm." So this is someone who makes their money off of music, and she believes that it's one of the best ways to change how someone feels in the moment. So I want to give you two quick examples. I hope you've seen Star Wars. This will make a little more sense if you have. Okay, so if you've seen Star Wars, you know that is not the original music. But it fits with the scene that you're watching with your eyes. Okay, it gives you, hopefully I felt this, it gives you a relaxed, peaceful feeling. Now I'm going to show you the original music and see if you feel any different. Okay, so the difference between those two 30-second clips is only one thing. It's what you're hearing. It's the music. So that's just an example of how sense perception can change the feeling, the emotion. A counterclaim to this is something that I found the Mozart effect illustrates well. The Mozart effect is a study that was done in 1993 where a university took two groups of students, and one of them they had sit in a room of silence for 15 minutes, and then they took a spatial reasoning test about folding paper and something like that. And the second group listened to a Mozart piano sonata and then took the same test. And afterwards they found that the results showed that the Mozart kids, they did a lot better on the test. So they started a craze where people all began to think that Mozart makes you smarter, and they started selling it to parents to play for their babies because they thought it made them smarter. But since then, tons and tons of universities and other people have done studies. They have proved that no, Mozart does not in fact make you any smarter. What it does is by listening to the music as opposed to silence, it stimulates brain activity. The same as beating on a desk would, because the sound makes you think. It's not that music makes you feel different, it's just that sound activates the mind. And that's why they did better on the test instead of just having silence. So the second area of knowledge that I talked a little bit about before is natural sciences. And I want to specifically talk about color and what happens to the human body when you see different colors. Two examples in the real world of what color does to people are one in Scotland. The company and university called Glasgow, if you've heard of it, did an experiment where they took a street with a high crime rate and high driving speeds and things like that, and they put in blue street lights all over this street. And they found that the crime rate and the driving speeds all lowered significantly. And they wondered, why is that? Well, they found that blue, the color blue, releases chemicals in the mind that are calming, that are relaxing. A railway station in Japan did the same exact thing, except this station had an unfortunately high amount of suicide rates. And they put in blue lights, and they found that the suicide rates also went down. Found the same thing. It calmed the people down and did not stimulate them to act as much. The Russian expressionistic artist Wasily Kandinsky said, "Color provokes a psychic vibration. Color hides a power still unknown but real, which acts on every part of the human body, including the mind and emotion." So just two quick examples is the color red. As you look at this, think about the fact that the color red releases chemicals in the mind that provoke people to act. It gives you energy, it gives you invigoration, and as opposed to the color blue. The color blue is, like I said before, it releases relaxing things in your mind. Too much exposure to the color blue can often cause people to feel even depressed or sad because it is a lack of energetic feelings in the mind. So what significance does this have in the real world? The fact that the senses can influence how you feel. Well, you might notice and realize and recognize some of these logos. The one thing that these have in common is the color red. Why? Because like I said, the color red activates you in your mind to do things. It gets you excited, in this case probably a little more hungry. It makes you want to take action, and that's why often companies will put red in their logos, in their advertisements, and things like that. And hopefully you recognize some of these, and maybe you didn't even know that they were influencing you to act when you saw their logos. So, in conclusion, to what extent is emotion influenced by sense perception? Well, there's a lot of evidence that points that it is. Emotion really can be varied and influenced and changed based on what you're perceiving in your body. There are other studies like I talked about the Mozart effect that say that no, it doesn't matter what exactly is going on, just brain stimulation will change how you think, change how you act, but it doesn't matter what it is. So, like a good knowledge question, there is no right answer to what extent it does. It's not 100%, it's not 2%. But I think you'll be able to tell for yourself how much you feel when you see the color red opposed to the color blue. Thank you.
Okay. 9 minutes 24.
9:24.